Hey guys, welcome to the video today. How many of you have been making wiring repairs or doing mods on your car using these Scotch lock connectors? Or even worse yet, I've taken some cars apart and I found that people are using residential wire nuts to make connections in their vehicles. Guys, this stuff is not going to last with the weather and the elements that your vehicles see driving down the road. What you need to do to make a good connection is solder your connections together. So what we're going to do today is go over some real quick, simple soldering tips to make life easy for you guys and make some great repairs. A few simple tools you're going to need. Obviously the soldering iron I was just holding up. You're going to need some 60/40 rosin core solder, that's what I recommend, and some wire strippers. So you can go expensive on wire strippers like these ones here, or you can use some cheaper wire strippers like what we have here. The choice is up to you. It doesn't really matter what you're using, just as long as you're stripping the wire properly. I don't recommend using a pocket knife because that doesn't work very well. You can actually cut the wire. My favorite wire strippers are a pistol grip design like this. If you're doing anything where you're going underneath of the dash to get at stuff, guys, this gets the job done. They get into the tight spaces so you can get your work done. Before we get started, I'd like to maybe have you guys make a comment of what sent you to this video. I'm always interested in what kind of project you guys are working on out there. So just shoot me a comment saying what you're working on. Hey guys, step one. So you found the wire that you're going to be working with. Now we need to get it stripped properly so we can make a good connection. Now we talked about the different strippers you could use. We'll use these ones right here. These are the cheaper strippers. You've got to make sure that you select the right wire size on the stripper in order to strip your wire with these. So we got our wire in there, we'll give it a little twist. It should slide off of there, not too bad. And there, we've got our wire stripped. About a 1/4 inch of wire, maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch of wire exposed there. I'm gonna go to my favorite strippers just because then you guys can see how quick and easy it is. There, I'm done already. All I did was slide the wire in there, pull the trigger, it was good to go. So we've got these other style strippers here. If you guys are interested in these, they work great also. Let me see if I can hold them upside down here. Stick your wire in there, give it a squeeze, boom, the wire's stripped. So now that we've got our wire stripped, our next step is to make sure we make a good mechanical connection. I've seen a lot of people just take the two pieces of wire and slide them together like so. And it seems like that's all fine and dandy because the strand's all lined up, but you can see that that's not a solid connection. It falls right apart. You need to make a good solid mechanical connection first. So I always take the wires, overlap them by about half, and then make sure I twist each wire around the other one nice and tight. This in and of itself would probably be a good enough connection to do some testing to make sure your component, whatever you're doing, is going to work, your modification is going to work, or your repair is going to work. And you can see that I can wave this around and wiggle it and it's not going to come apart. So now that we've got a good mechanical connection, let's move on to getting this soldered. So right about now some of you are probably thinking, well, what if I need to tee into the middle of a section of wire? Possibly you guys came here from my Every Mod video for the TDI Jettas. If you're going to tee into a chunk of wire in the middle, you're not going to want to chop the ends of it off, are you? So what we can do at this point is you got to take that knife or that razor blade and carefully cut the insulation away from that section of wire. So with that cut away, we're going to strip a chunk of wire from other wire, and we're going to kind of do the same basic principle. You're probably not going to be able to twist this wire around because it's in a harness. You've only got, a few inches of it exposed. But we can take this wire here and we're still going to wrap it around there as tight as we can in a nice twisted motion. So you can see there we've got a nice mechanical connection again, and now we'll get to soldering. One very important step for us is going to be making sure we start with a clean soldering iron. So this soldering iron's been used here in class. We can see that if the camera's going to focus on that, it looks pretty junky, doesn't it? It's dirty, not very good. If we're going to melt this metal, what we need to do is transfer heat. So we've got a wet sponge down here, and if you don't have one of these soldering iron setups, you don't need the wet sponge. You can do that with a damp rag, but you can see how clean that makes the end of that soldering iron And then I'm just going to go ahead, we call this tinning the tip. I'm going to take a little bit of solder and touch it on there. And that cleans that tip up a little bit more. So I've got this soldering gun set just past the 3 on the dial you see over here. I actually looked up in the user manual, and this is a 40 watt soldering iron. The 5 setting being your highest wattage at 40 watts, so I'm going to assume we're just a little over 20 watts. It did not give a heat indication on that, on what that would be. I like this soldering station just for that reason right there. You can put your soldering iron back in there. I've got some helping hands set up here. I'm going to try and zoom in on this as best as possible so you guys can see the technique on which I'm going to use to solder this wire together. Alright, here we've got a clean view of our wire. Now what a lot of people do is they try and just pile the solder on top of the wire and hope that it drains into there, but that will not give you a good connection. You need to heat from the underside of your wire and bring your solder in from the top. Sometimes you need to touch it to the soldering iron just a little bit to get it started to wick in there. Can you see it's already changing color and turning silver there on the top? I'm just going to touch my solder on the top of that, and it goes right in there. You notice I'm leaving my soldering iron in the one spot, but moving the solder itself. So our goal here is not to paste the solder on there. We want to create enough through. So I've got a couple different ones set up here so we can do this a couple different times. Here's another wire we've got here, twisted them up. I did some different wire colors. I don't know if that's going to be helpful for us or not. Hopefully that helps some of you. So here we go. I've got my soldering iron on the bottom side of my connection there that I've already made. I'm going to touch to the soldering iron there on the side, let it warm up, and then my solder is going to melt down from the top. Now one thing you want to make sure you do with this is not put too much solder on the joint. Like you've seen, I just had to wick some extra solder off of there. When we go to heat shrink these soldering joints, it's going to be very important that we've got them properly set. So I'm going to take this one out of here. I'm going to put in that T-joint that we made. Take a look at that. Nice good joint there, guys, nice and tight. It's not even supported on the other side. I'm only using the helping hands on one side here. I'm going to go in here with my solder iron again, make sure we're warm, and there we go. No need to wick solder all the way up to your insulation, everybody. You can see how we stayed away from the insulation here. None of our insulation got melted. That's not going to do us any good later on either. Hey guys, great job doing your soldering repair. Now what are you going to do? You don't want to just wrap that up with electrical tape and send your vehicle back out on the street. That's not going to protect it enough. You need to use some heat shrink tubing. So heat shrink tubing becomes available in different sizes, or I should say comes available in different sizes. You can click the link below for the heat shrink tubing that I use. You will gauge that to your wire size. So wire sizes, we'll talk a little more in another video on wire connectors. The link for that will be below. You can go ahead and click on that. If you're interested in not doing soldering, you don't want to invest the equipment into soldering, then there are some different connector setups that you can use where you can make a connection without doing soldering. So that being said, let's do a little roll on how to shrink this tubing.